Throughout the ages, on every part of the globe, satanic sacrifices dawned on every culture, some in public, whilst others hidden from view. This practice exists till this very day, right under our very noses. The people involved are royalists, politicians, judges, lawyers, dentists, and from every walk of life are involved. Millions of children go missing every year, sold into slavery, prostitution, and satanic sacrifice. The earth is one big slaughterhouse. Animals not only are they slaughtered for food, but sacrificed for barbaric ancient ritual in the name of their satanic gods. Other animals killed for hunting and for gruesome experiments. In China, dogs are used for their fur while still alive. In Australia alone, more than 50,000 animals are experimented on and tested on in one single year. Animals are culled worldwide. Just recently, 100,000 monkeys were killed in Malaysia to make room for farming. In Islam, over 100 million animals, mainly sheep and lambs, are slaughtered for good luck worldwide in only 2 days of Eid of Ramadan. In the New Testament, 22,000 sheep and cattle were slaughtered. Thousands of animals have been blown up, poisoned, or given anthrax in secret military experiments at Porton Down last year alone. Famine, disease, drought, natural and not so natural disasters are also sacrifices. In Niger alone, 2,500 children under the age of 5 have died from starvation and malnutrition in the last month alone. Starvation and malnutrition deaths are over 15 million a year. To satisfy the world's sanitation and food requirements would cost only $13 billion. That is what the people of the United States and the European Union spend on perfume each year. World wars and conflicts are on one level, satanic ritual sacrifices. Child sacrifice was introduced to the agenda practiced worldwide till this very day. There are many levels of child sacrifices, but the real reason, known only to a few, is that sacrifice must be performed to keep this fake 3D illusion intact. Just as in ancient Egypt and Babylon, they must commit human sacrifice continually to generate the fear, which generates the energy. On another level is that the ritual is the representation of the newborn, being born into a slave world since the fall of man from the Garden of Eden, which is really a fall after the cataclysm. The other level is mind control of the masses through religion and other dubious ways of persuasion, as we shall see. The sacrifice of one's own child, particularly that of the firstborn, was always seen as one of the higher sacraments in the ancient world. Going back to the oldest cults in history, people sacrificed their own children to the gods. Priests, kings, and even the gods themselves offered up the fruit of their wombs. In reward for this, they believed they would receive blessings from heaven, prosperity, fertility, health, and protection from evil. In the Old Testament, God condemns child sacrifice, but only because it is part of the customs of rival cults, because the sacrifices are not done unto him. Burnt offerings to Baal Moloch, in which babies were placed inside of an oven made in the shape of the bull-horned god of the Phoenicians. Certainly the concept that drinking blood or bathing in it will bring eternal youth is nothing new. This is, of course, at the heart of the vampire myth. Elizabeth Bathory, the famous blood countess of 16th century Hungary, was said to have killed up to 600 young virgin girls for the purpose of bathing in their blood, which purportedly gave her skin an eternally youthful appearance. Romans reported watching hundreds of mothers throwing their newborn into the Tiber every morning. So many infants were killed that even though mothers had 8 or more babies, the populations of antiquity regularly decreased. Mass burials of thousands of sacrificed infants have been discovered in early states from Germany to France to Carthage, where archaeologists found one cemetery filled with over 20,000 urns containing bones of children sacrificed by their parents, who would kill them if the gods would grant the parents a favor, like if their shipment of goods were to arrive safely. As Quintilian said, to put one's own children to death is at times the noblest of deeds. Sacrifices are always necessary whenever independence and success is achieved, and the avenging killer mother goddess must be placated. Even when people built new buildings or bridges, little children were usually sealed in them alive, as foundation sacrifices to ward off the avenging maternal spirits who resent the hubris of building the structure. Those existing ancient and beautiful temples and cathedrals, which are called by many the House of God, which are spread all around the planet, are in reality and in truth temples and cathedrals erected with innocent human blood. The Kostnis is a small Christian chapel decorated with human bones. Not even ancient Greeks could dispense with human sacrifices. Early reports of burning and eating of children in human sacrifices were followed in classical Athens by the practice of keeping victims called pharmakoi, who were ritually stoned to death as scapegoats for the sins of others. Franklin Roosevelt. In 1998, the Times of London reported that the bones of 6 children were discovered underneath the floorboards of Franklin's old home near Trafalgar Square, where he lived when he was ambassador to England. It was during this time that his participation in the Hellfire Club occurred, amongst other horrible things, the drinking of blood of unbaptized infants. The skeletons showed that the bodies had been cut up, and some of the skulls had holes drilled into them. Blood drinking today is rampant through Satanists, royalists, presidents, and people in power. Al Gore was caught with vials of blood at the airport. Consuming human flesh, particularly that of babies or fetuses, for the purpose of obtaining health and vigor is still disturbingly common in the world. It is part of traditional medicine, as practiced in some parts of China, where there is an underground market for human fetuses and deceased infants. There is also an endless supply available due to the country's stringent one-child policy. In southern Africa, human body parts are referred to as muti and are traded at high value on the black market for use in witch doctor ceremonies. In antiquity, since women were an alien and inferior species, sex with wives was a rare duty, engaged in mainly to provide offspring, and men were addicted to raping young children, both boys and girls, in order to prove their virility and dominance. Their rapes were almost always agreed to by their parents, who often pimped their children and slaves for a price, rented them out to neighbors as servants to be raped, sold their virgin daughters for marriage for 50 pieces of silver, gave their children to pedagogues for sexual use, made their children serve at their banquets so they could be raped after dinner, went to war in order to rape the children of enemies, and handed over their children to the brothels, bathhouses, and temples that could be found in any city of antiquity. Physicians advocated the rape of children as a way to overcome depression and as a cure for venereal disease. Parents taught their children that the teacher's thrusting his penis between his thighs or in his anus is the fee which the pupil pays for good teaching. Parents in early ancient states proudly sacrificed their children to avenging deities. As I have documented in detail, child sacrifice was the foundation of all great religions. Maccabee's book, The Sacred Executioner, portrays the entire history. Millions of children go missing every year, being kept in cages for use as human sacrifice and future CIA sex slaves. They are also used in child labor camps. Today in Japan, child pornography is not illegal, and in India and Southeast Asia, young teens are readily available in bars for sex at around $15 American. Satanism, mind control. One level of Satanism is nothing more than a form of mind control that affects the participants involved and their victims in certain ways, depending on what level of mind control is needed. There are many levels. High-level participants that are involved in black covert operations involving scientists, engineers, pilots, etc., are all introduced to Satanism and are shown horrific rituals involving sacrifices in which they must participate in. Those present also share blood. There are sacrifices going on and torture, the programs of satanic worship and satanic sacrifice, and the love of the bloodthirsty killing of innocents. Once reaching that level, they take a vow to Lucifer. This is to establish not only a form of mind control, but to establish the participant as being a member of a satanic cult. They now have them by the nutsack, so to speak. Who can they tell? And who would believe them? This form of Satanism, mind control, is incorporated in every field of mind control and is an epidemic running wild. It runs rampant in every part of the entertainment industry. The very well-connected families of centimillionaires who are very involved in diplomatic and intelligence operations are all involved in Satanism. The Illuminati Cabal family themselves are subjected to massive mind control and Satanism. The elite are also all compartmentalized, and even more so than the average man. Each one of these elite minds only gets a bit of what it is that they need to know to move the agenda along. They themselves are under immense mind control since birth. Check out Fritz Springmeier, deeper insights into the Illuminati formula, not for the light-hearted. Anton LaVey's Satanism is more of a philosophical side of Satanism, which is like a soft porn designed for the would-be sheeple Satanist. That's why your average Satanist will argue about what is said here. Some so-called secret societies are mind control institutions in disguise run by the CIA. There are several recruitment mechanisms which are all based on the carrot and stick approach. The bait, which is commonly used to lure new members, is sex, money, bribery, drugs, pornography, and some form of sycophantic purloining process. Salo, the 120 Days of Sodom. The film focuses on four wealthy, corrupted, fascist libertines after the fall of Benito Mussolini's Italy in July 1943, and that was the cover story, but what it really was in depth is something else. The movie is about mind control victims, programmers, slave handlers, and even shows a black mass. The 1975 Italian film, written and directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini, was Pasolini's last film. He was murdered shortly before Saulo was released. Eyes Wide Shut is another movie that shows what the elite get up to, which shows mind control, sex slaves, sex magic, rituals and sacrifice. Of course, the movie shown is soft porn in comparison to the real rituals. Bohemian Grove. When Alex Jones was invited, infiltrated the Bohemian Grove and broke the story of the rituals, which only happened to be a mock sacrifice, even though in reality the private club gets their sacrifice victims through the CIA and the MK Ultra Mind Control Program, MK standing for Mind Control. Many thousands of children are simply bred for sale to this program. Children are used for every possible perversion by the leaders of the world before they're ritually sacrificed. The ritual is called. The participants are casting aside all of their worldly concerns. Through the sacrifice of the youth of others, they can relax now. As the ritual states, midsummer sets us free. Just like those who came before us, we have been sold into slavery by our ancestors, who were simultaneously plied with promises of blessings and threatened with curses until they agreed to offer their children up for sacrifice. The one statue that Mr. Jones failed to film was the one most obvious as equally powerful, meaning like the Molech statue was the one statue with the finger over the lips. Shh. Reminding everyone to be very quiet, or else a scandal will come out about all those homosexual activities that are filmed in the Grove and other places like the White House brothels and those billionaire ship cruises that reside just outside international waters where there is no law, where all your fantasies are catered for. This is how presidents and all these gopher puppet elite in positions of power are kept at bay. These are all nothing but mafia tactics. There is also the $500 million club and the $1 billion club. These clubs are set up so they can lure these new super rich into the tentacles of the corrupt mafia octopus.
Mumbo jumbo, mumbo jumbo, mumbo jumbo, mumbo jumbo. Look around you, all of you. What do you see? A bunch of buffoons in fancy dress.
I was an FBI agent for 27.5 years. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I have been qualified in the courts as an expert on cults and satanic ritual abuse. I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many prominent individuals, including actors, actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type activities.
Please remember, most of the people who are at the Pentagon, in the White House, in the CIA, and secret societies know nothing about these ultra-secret agendas. They are cogs in a machine, and are also victims of ignorance. Most are good people, caught in a machine not of their making, and about which they have very little knowledge. There are also many sincere people who go into, for instance, politics to make a difference in the world in a positive way. These people don't get very far and are demoted. If by any chance they slip through, they are quickly analyzed and they do a profile on you and see that you were to the right of Mussolini in terms of wanting to be aggressively violent, destructive, and of course corruptible. You couldn't get past that level. You have to be wired to be extremely violent and hate-filled. If not, they will end their involvement with you, in which case you will be swept aside. This is the people running our world right now. That's why the world is in the shape it's in. One such case of some slipping through the ranks was in Australia, involving Mark Latham, the opposition leader who challenged Zionist cabal-controlled Prime Minister John Howard for the top spot. Latham, suddenly he fell very ill and weak in the middle of the campaign and had to back down. Claims of high-tech weaponry were used against Mark Latham, who was a high-profile figure who wanted to do good for Australia. High-tech weaponry that can make a person very ill and can give someone a heart attack by just pointing the weapon against them is now at the elite's disposal. This weapon does exist and is well documented. These high-tech weaponries work because on one level the body is light and it works like an electrical motor. They know how to disrupt the electrical flow. Cancer is still an old favorite they use for the undesirables like President Chavez, who also wanted to do good for his people. So if you think Hugo Chavez died a natural death, I'm afraid that you are terminally naive. The Venezuelan president himself, before he died, wondered aloud whether the US government or the banksters who own it gave him and his other leading Latin American enemies with cancer. American Indian movement leader Vernon Belcourt on his deathbed said, "The CIA finally got me." Australia and New Zealand are now in the hands of Zionists. It is also the test case for the New World Order. The motto for New Zealand is, "She'll be right." The motto for Australia, "She'll be right, mate." That is why Australia and New Zealand were chosen as the test case.